Charles Manson, a name that has become synonymous with terror and malevolence. The name itself sends shivers down spines, evoking a visceral reaction of fear and revulsion. It conjures images of a bygone era stained by unimaginable violence, a time when the world seemed to teeter on the brink of chaos. Even decades after his reign of terror, Manson remains a chilling figure in American history, a symbol of chaos and manipulation. His influence extended far beyond the immediate circle of his followers, casting a long, dark shadow over the collective consciousness of a nation. His story, a twisted tapestry of broken dreams and cold-blooded murder, continues to fascinate and horrify. The Manson family murders were not just a series of brutal killings, they were a cultural watershed, a grim punctuation mark in the turbulent narrative of the 1960s. What was it about this man, a career criminal with a troubled past, that allowed him to amass such a devoted following? How did he transform from a petty criminal into a messianic figure capable of orchestrating such heinous acts? How did he convince seemingly ordinary individuals to commit such heinous acts? The answers to these questions lie in a complex web of psychological manipulation, societal upheaval, and the dark allure of charismatic leadership. These questions have haunted investigators, psychologists, and the public alike for generations. The Manson case has been dissected and analyzed from every conceivable angle, yet it remains an enigma, a dark puzzle that resists easy solutions. Manson's story is a stark reminder of the seductive nature of evil and the fragility of the human psyche. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable reality that under certain conditions, ordinary people can be led to commit extraordinary atrocities. It serves as a cautionary tale, urging us to confront the darkest corners of human nature and to remain vigilant against the allure of charismatic manipulators. The Manson saga underscores the importance of critical thinking and the dangers of blind obedience. The legacy of Charles Manson is not just one of murder and mayhem, it is a complex and multifaceted legacy that continues to provoke thought and debate. His death marked the end of an era, but the questions he raised about human nature and societal vulnerability remain as relevant as ever. It is a legacy that forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world we live in. As we reflect on the horrors of the past, we are reminded of the importance of vigilance, empathy, and the enduring struggle to understand the complexities of the human condition. To understand the monster, we must first understand the man. Charles Mills Manson was born into a world devoid of love and stability. His childhood was a brutal concoction of poverty, neglect, and abuse, setting the stage for a life marred by violence and instability. Abandoned by his mother, shuffled between relatives and institutions, young Charles knew only betrayal and rejection. His mother, Kathleen Maddox, was a teenage runaway who struggled with alcoholism and crime. She was often absent, leaving Charles in the care of various relatives who were ill-equipped to provide the nurturing environment he so desperately needed. This lack of a stable home life left deep scars, fostering a sense of worthlessness and a burning resentment towards authority. He began his criminal career early, drifting in and out of reform schools and prisons. Each stint behind bars further hardened him, honing his skills of manipulation and deception. Prison became his twisted classroom, where he learned to exploit weaknesses and bend others to his will. These formative years, steeped in deprivation and violence, shaped the man who would become the infamous Charles Manson. His childhood offered no sanctuary, no guiding light. It was a breeding ground for anger and resentment, a crucible in which a monster was forged. The instability of his early years was compounded by the harsh realities of the Great Depression, a time when many families struggled to make ends meet. This economic hardship only added to the sense of hopelessness and despair that permeated Manson's early life. As he grew older, Manson's behavior became increasingly erratic and violent. He was sent to multiple reform schools, each one failing to rehabilitate him. Instead, these institutions only served to reinforce his distrust of authority and his belief that the world was a hostile place. In these reform schools, Manson learned to survive by any means necessary, often resorting to violence and manipulation to get what he wanted. His time in these institutions also exposed him to a variety of criminal influences. He met other young delinquents who shared his disdain for authority and his willingness to break the law. These relationships further solidified his path towards a life of crime. By the time he reached adulthood, Manson was well versed in the ways of the criminal underworld. He had learned how to manipulate people, how to exploit their weaknesses, and how to use violence to achieve his goals. His early experiences with neglect and abuse had left him with a deep-seated anger and a desire for revenge against a society that he felt had wronged him. This anger would later manifest in the horrific crimes that he would commit. But to truly understand the monster that Charles Manson became, we must look back at the child who was shaped by a world of darkness and despair. The story of Charles Manson is a stark reminder of the impact that a troubled childhood can have on an individual. It is a tale of how neglect, abuse, and a lack of stability can create a person capable of unimaginable evil. Manson's early years were a perfect storm of negative influences, each one contributing to the creation of a man who would go on to become one of the most infamous criminals in history. As we delve deeper into the life of Charles Manson, we will see how these early experiences shaped his worldview and his actions. We will explore the events that led him down the path of crime and violence, and we will try to understand the mind of a man who became a symbol of evil. But it all begins with a childhood shrouded in darkness, a childhood that set the stage for a life of infamy. The story of Charles Manson is not just a story of one man's descent into madness. It is also a story of a society that failed to protect its most vulnerable members. It is a story of how neglect and abuse can create a monster, and how the scars of a troubled childhood can last a lifetime. As we continue to explore the life of Charles Manson, we must remember the lessons of his early years, and strive to create a world where no child has to endure the same hardships. In the end, the story of Charles Manson is a tragic reminder of the importance of love, stability, and support in a child's life. It is a reminder that the seeds of evil are often sown in the soil of neglect and abuse. And it is a reminder that we all have a responsibility to protect and nurture the children in our lives, to ensure that they grow up in a world filled with hope and possibility, rather than darkness and despair, a crucible in which a monster was forged. By the time he reached adulthood, Manson was a product of his environment. Born to a 16-year-old mother who struggled with her own issues, Manson's early life was marked by instability and neglect. His mother was in and out of prison, leaving young Charles to fend for himself or be placed in various foster homes. This lack of a stable, loving environment contributed to his developing a deep-seated mistrust of the world around him. He was cunning, charismatic, and utterly devoid of empathy. These traits were not innate, but rather cultivated through years of hardship and survival. Manson learned early on that to get what he wanted, he had to manipulate those around him. His charm was his weapon, and he wielded it with precision. These traits, honed in the unforgiving world he grew up in, would become the tools of his deadly trade. Manson spent much of his youth in and out of juvenile detention centers, where he further refined his manipulative skills. He learned to read people, to understand their desires and fears, and to use this knowledge to his advantage. The harsh realities of his upbringing left him with a skewed moral compass, one that would guide his actions in the years to come. Manson possessed an uncanny ability to read people, to see through their facades and identify their deepest insecurities. This skill made him incredibly dangerous, as he could easily manipulate those who were vulnerable. He had an almost hypnotic effect on people, drawing them in with his intense gaze and charismatic personality, to identify their vulnerabilities and exploit them to his advantage. He preyed on those who were lost, those who were searching for something more in life. Manson offered them a sense of belonging, a place where they felt understood and accepted. But this acceptance came at a price. He demanded complete loyalty and obedience, using fear and manipulation to maintain control. He was a master manipulator, weaving tales of love, acceptance, and revolution to attract those desperate for belonging. In the 1960s, a time of social upheaval and change, Manson found fertile ground for his manipulative tactics. He created a commune, a so-called family, where he positioned himself as the ultimate authority. He promised his followers a new way of life, free from the constraints of society. His charisma, a potent blend of charm and menace, proved irresistible to many, drawing them into his web of control. He used his magnetic personality to attract young, impressionable individuals who were disillusioned with the world around them. They saw in Manson a leader, someone who could provide the answers they were seeking. He offered them a sense of purpose, a mission that gave their lives meaning. Manson's followers believed they were part of something bigger, a movement that would change the world. This sense of purpose was intoxicating, making it easier for Manson to manipulate them into doing his bidding, a warped vision of utopia where they could escape the perceived injustices of the world. Manson painted a picture of a perfect society, one where his followers could live in harmony and peace. But this utopia was an illusion, a tool he used to control and manipulate. He convinced his followers that the outside world was corrupt, and that only he could lead them to salvation. He preyed on the disenfranchised, the lost souls searching for meaning in a world that felt increasingly chaotic and uncaring. These individuals were easy targets for Manson's manipulative tactics. They were looking for answers, for someone to guide them, and Manson was more than willing to step into that role. Manson understood the power of fear, and used it ruthlessly to maintain control. He instilled a sense of dread in his followers, convincing them that leaving the commune would result in dire consequences. This fear kept them loyal, ensuring that they would do whatever he asked without question. He instilled in his followers a blind loyalty, convincing them that he was the only one who truly understood them, the only one who could offer them salvation. This blind loyalty was the cornerstone of Manson's control. His followers believed in him completely, willing to go to any lengths to please him, the only one who could offer them salvation. In the end, Manson's manipulative tactics led to one of the most infamous crime sprees in American history. His ability to control and manipulate those around him was unparalleled, making him one of the most dangerous individuals of his time. In the heart of the 1960s, amidst the counterculture movement and the social upheaval of the era, Manson found his audience. He established his base at Spawn Ranch, a dilapidated movie set turned commune, where he assembled his following, a group of disaffected young people who would become known as the Family. This was not a family in any traditional sense, but a cult of personality built around Manson's twisted ideology. He preached a bizarre mix of counterculture ideals, racial hatred, and apocalyptic prophecies, all held together by his own twisted charisma. He encouraged drug use and sexual freedom, using them as tools to break down inhibitions and foster dependence. The Family became his disciples, his soldiers in a coming race war he called Helter Skelter. They were utterly devoted, willing to do anything for their leader, even kill. Under the California sun, Manson cultivated an atmosphere of fear and adoration, transforming vulnerable individuals into instruments of his will.